Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, and Season 5 continues. The first weekend of D1 college softball is in the books, and it was wild. There is already so much going on, and we're going to get more into it. But first, however you got here today, whether it was an audio podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, etc., or watching on YouTube, thank you. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your pods. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And of course, as always, we got merch. Click the link in our bio on either of those pages or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase. There are 3 softball shirts available, covering our bases, safer out, and catch you soon. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we'll be covering our bases. I'll share some updates and callouts. Then we'll head into today's interview with Jen Rocha. Easily one of the best pitching coaches in the country, part of multiple national championships, not just at OU, but throughout her career. And then we'll end things with the foul tip of the week, the segment where we share tips to help us get better. All right, let's get started. Covering our bases. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or your mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team, and remember to use promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline. The game starts here. Another thing that starts here is that you heard it first last week. I'm teaming up with Ribbit Sports this season. I'm super excited. They sent me some sweet Ringer softball turfs, icy all whites. I love them, and I'm going to be wearing them a lot at the field this season. And I also just love that their mission is really powerful, to elevate female athletic performance. They get it. They understand that women and girls deserve gear specifically tailored to our needs. Gear that fits right, performs well, and meets our unique demands. The best news is that Ribbit is offering an exclusive 15% discount. Just use the code Jenna15 where you shop at ribbit.com. That's JENNA15. Super excited about this one, and it's your chance to experience the same quality gear that helps so many women and girls excel. So the first weekend of Division I softball, there were multiple tournaments of interest. It's hard to even keep up with them all because there was the NFCA leadoff in Clearwater, the Puerto Vallarta tournament that happens more than once a year, Kajikawa, which used to be bigger, but starting to build back up, where Northwestern's at ASU, and I'm kind of flashing back to super regionals a couple years ago. Texas was at UCLA, Cal was at Louisiana, tensions were high. It was wild, and I cannot believe it's only a weekend so far. Virginia Tech and Auburn, by the way, it was called for rain, so they were tied towards the end of the game. Virginia Tech hits a grand slam, but because they had to end the game early and they didn't end up being able to make it up the next day or any other time, the grand slam didn't count and they ended in a tie from the previous inning. Weird stuff, right? What a bummer, but we're not really unused to seeing this. If we think back to when Texas and Kentucky played last year, and we talked to Coach Lawson about that, for example, and games are crazy, man. They're super crazy. And then speaking of just success, though, successful crazy. Mizzou went 5-0. They beat some ranked teams, so just some great strength of schedule. So it's one thing to go 5-0 to me. It's another thing to play good teams and beat them. Huge difference. They're back in the polls this week now after not being in it last week. LSU, 5 shutouts, 5 different pitchers. That is impressive. And then Kentucky beat Stanford twice. Not once, but twice. And they did beat Reagan Krause and Nigel Kennedy. It took weeks and weeks for Nigel to give up an earned run at all last year during the season. And she did give one up in the first weekend this time around. It was a home run, and that was the only one. She still had 33 strikeouts and got Pac-12 Pitcher of the Week anyway. But still impressive by Kentucky to be able to do that twice for a top 4 team in Stanford. And just a surprise. I think UCLA struggled, period. There's really no other way to paint it. They went 2-3 on the weekend. They were run ruled in back-to-back games, including the worst loss in history, 16-0 against Texas, the second time they played them. And then they turned around and got run ruled by Oklahoma State as well. I want to give the credit to those Big 12 teams. I mean, Texas had also gotten the 1-run victory against UCLA before that, 3-2 in a close game. Now what I'm curious about is we give those teams their credit because it's deserved, but I want to see how UCLA responds. And response is something that I know they talk about a lot. And it's something that Coach Kelly Inouye-Perez talks about is the Lisa Fernandez stat, which is essentially all about a pitcher's response. If you give up a hit, it's all about what do you do in the next at bat. Lisa Fernandez was fantastic at getting the next person out. So the stat essentially follows like, how good are you? How often do you get that next out? And even if you kind of go after somebody and like maybe they do get another hit, they still kind of give you a pat on the back because you still went after that hitter. You're not walking people, dramatic, whatever it is. So I know that they have that on small different levels. Let's see how they do it on a big level after a tough weekend like this. I do think Washington sent a message as well. I mean, the 8-0 run rule over Nebraska, they had some offensive weapons graduate, Bailey Klingler, Sammy Reynolds. The Huskies were right there. They had a 1-run extra inning game against OU. A lot of back and forth because there was no video review at this particular venue in Puerto Vallarta. I think we need it when top teams are competing. I will say there was, an obstruction at one point where I think Oklahoma fans were frustrated. And then later on, it was the runner safe at home at a different play for Washington? We just need the video review is where I'm at with it. Everyone, including the umpires, wants to get the call right. And regardless, they had a 1-run game with the number 1 school in the country when it comes to softball. Pretty good. I think a great start. Then there was an iguana on the field. Like, I just don't, so many things that were not on my bingo card for 2024 have already happened somehow. And on a serious note, one of those things is Jordy Ball. She did get hurt on opening day and she came out early in the game. She tore her ACL, turns out. It's devastating news, for her health, first and foremost, for the team's outlook. There was so much excitement and hype around her going to Nebraska. And also for the teammates and the coaches that watched her go down. That is a terrible feeling to see a teammate or one of your players as a coach go through that live. I've seen it. My teammate tore her ACL the day before we left for opening weekend, my junior year. She had already torn her other ACL as a freshman the year before. She fought all year, to come back. She fought all during the fall to earn the start in outfield for the first weekend. And then she tore her other ACL less than 24 hours before our plane was leaving. And it was just a lead off of first base, just like Jordy was just a pitch and a plant on that left foot. It was just something that seemed small, but it had a big impact. I'm interested in the response. I would say so far it seems like the right mindset from Jordy. She specifically in her statement when she announced this and that she was redshirting said that she's going to support the red team in a different way. I like that it's not a question of, if she's going to support them, but it's how she's going to support them this year because that's still her team. And now I'm interested to see how the team responds. It's one of, if not the biggest transfer in college softball history. Now what? Right? It's that adversity piece that always plays a factor. So we're wishing Jordy and the entire program the best through this and all the health and wellness along the way. And a reminder for us too, that things can change in a second. So just in terms of my reaction to all the craziness from this first weekend, my reaction is let's not be too reactive. It is so early in the season still. Lineups are changing. Stats are skewed from having a small sample size, less at bats, only a few innings maybe for pitchers. Like this is why they call it a batting average. This is why they call it an earned run average, because things do level out over time. And we see so much more on TV and streaming at this point in the season than we ever have before. It's amazing. But the last we saw of college softball on TV like this was the peak at the Women's College World Series. And now here we are. It's the very beginning of the season. Remember, it is a long road to Oklahoma City. If anything, it speaks to the growing parity that we talk about over the last several years, especially across the country in college softball. And I would say keep that in mind for rankings too. The preseason rankings and that sort of stuff is all about what's on paper. And we talk about the tools that the teams have and what could be done, but what they actually do with those tools between the lines, it's still TBD. I don't know if anyone would have picked Utah last year this early in the season to be going to the Women's College World Series, for example. And look what they did after winning the Pac-12 tournament. So let it play out. Let's let it play out. And then also for me specifically, I'm going to Clearwater. I'm there for the first time this weekend with D1 softball. I'm going to be doing some on-site coverage with Amanda Lorenz. Really, really excited about it. And we have some fun stuff coming. And if you're not already, be sure to follow D1 softball on X or Twitter and Instagram and all the socials so you can stay up to date and in the know. And to bring it home, I wanted to mention a couple noteworthy things to think about as we continue through the season. One of those things is that the Big Ten now has all women coaches. All 14 teams across the Big Ten are now led by women. Now with Lauren Karn leading Maryland, that's the one big coaching change. There was a promotion elsewhere too, but the one big change is with her in the top dog seat, and now it's all women. And previously, last year, I talked about this a lot because it was really the Pac-12 and the Ivy League were the only ones in Division I that could boast this same thing. And now we have the Big Ten. And guess what? Next year, when Washington, Oregon, and UCLA all make that move to the Big Ten, it's still going to be true across all 17 programs that are in that conference. I just think that's fun and exciting to know that we are being led by so many women that played this game. And then on top of that, Arizona softball program is celebrating 50 seasons, 50 years of Wildcat softball. We know, 8 national championships, countless All-Americans, Olympians, all of it. One of the most historic programs in college softball history. And I just think it's a lot of cool content that we're seeing and we will continue to see throughout the season. Friend of the show, Kenzie Fowler, another All-American and alum from Arizona, actually is behind a lot of that because she works for Arizona Athletics. So I'm excited to see what else they come up with. But just overall, anytime women are making an impact on our game, I'm here to celebrate it. And someone who knows what it's like to make a big impact is today's guest. So let's head into the interview. She is a 2-time NFCA Division I Assistant Coach of the Year, Oklahoma Associate Head Coach and Pitching Coach, and Sooner alum, Jen Rocha. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me today, Jenna.
Well, and before I forget, because I'll get in trouble if I don't do this, my dad wanted me to pass along that he thinks you're one of the best and that you don't get enough credit. And that's not a knock on OU or the fans of the team or anything like that. It's nationwide from everyone else. He thinks you should get more credit.
That's funny. Well, tell your dad thank you. I appreciate his vote, but it's all good.
Well, it's I think important though to think about the entire game, right? Because everybody knows the huge offensive numbers that OU puts up constantly. I mean, the Jocelyn Allo a couple of years ago, but just the entire team really is able to do that and hit home runs. But you guys didn't just lead the nation in batting average last year, also fielding percentage and yes, ERA as well. So that does seem like a recipe for success when you're doing that.
I was very happy, just proud of our staff for what they did and just that accomplishment. The offense obviously does make it a lot easier for us and gives us that cushion that we need to be able to, compete comfortably at times. So, it definitely, there's a whole circuit of events that's happening that, allows the girls to do what they do.
Yeah. And it makes sense that the head coach gets a lot of visibility because they have the most accountability at the end of the day. But every time I talk to a head coach, especially if they're just starting up a program or just joining a program, the key is, they always say, is the staff. Like, it always starts with the staff and the people around you. And I know Patty Gassos has called you her rock throughout, ever since you've been in Norman, been back in Norman, essentially. Do you feel that kind of relationship with the rest of the staff as well?
Yeah, I think we've had a long-standing relationship. I've had a long-standing relationship with the Gassos and really everybody. I actually knew her husband before I even knew Coach. And then, obviously have watched both DJ and JT just kind of grow up over the years. And now just to see both of them really excel, just in their craft, and to be coaching alongside of Coach Gasso. And she's always been a mentor of mine since I competed for her and then got into the coaching ranks. So I have a lot of respect for, just again, just their family. And, aside from what she does as a coach, just, having a more personal relationship with her has been really cool.
Well, I love the story that she originally recruited you to Long Beach City College before you went to OU, and then you went there for a year, and then you transferred to play with her again. I think that's a really cool tie-in to this family that you all have.
Yeah, JT and I joke about being JUCO bandits. So, now it still happens where, there are junior college players that, obviously still are excelling and moving on to play, in Division I ranks and across the NCAA. But that was my path for me when I was younger. And, coach was coaching, at Long Beach City College. And so that's really where, our relationship began. And so it's humbling. It always is just something that's just a reminder of, kind of where we came from, and, how we were able to get to where we're at now.
Well, I'm a SoCal girl too, so I appreciate the roots that you and her share.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And now this year, it's crazy because you think about that in the beginning, and then fast forward to there's going to be a brand new field for OU softball. When you think back to like the early playing days when you first started playing for Coach Gasso, and now here fast forward, you've been coaching with her for a while. Like, how do you reflect on how much has evolved?
Yeah, it's I think now being able to watch, literally, watch it being built and kind of seeing it evolve, like right in front of our eyes, right down the street. It puts me in that reflection mode really a lot, often, just remembering. I mean, I began my career for 2 years at Oklahoma and played at the rec park across the street for 2 years. And then ironically enough, my senior year was the year that Marita Hines was built, and we were able to play, my senior year in Marita Hines. And then it's just kind of taken on a life of its own. It really was just a stadium with bleachers and a field, and public restrooms. So even Marita Hines has grown a little bit, hasn't. Now it's getting ready to catch up with, some of the other really wonderful stadiums across the country. But I remember when I was recruited to Oklahoma, I didn't even see the softball field because Coach Gasso, and myself and another one of my teammates from Long Beach City came on a recruiting trip, and we flew in, got picked up, came to campus, and it was like we did a drive-by on the softball field, and that's where we play softball, right there at that, on that field there. And then we just went straight to the football stadium, and got to see the grandeur of, all of what Oklahoma football was, and kind of, really wherever all the magic was happening at the football stadium at that time. But we laugh about it now. I'm like, Coach, you didn't even take me to the softball field. She's like, I know, because it was not good. She said the field we had at Long Beach City was, 10 times better than what our field was here at Oklahoma. And so we just laugh about it now. And actually, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she was able to play her first little t-ball season on the same field that we used to play on when we were younger. And it's still not great, but it's a rec league park and a city park, and it's just humbling to really just think about kind of how far we've come, and really excited about what Love Stadium is going to be. And I'm just happy. I'm really happy for Coach that she's really been kind of behind a lot of what everybody's going to be able to see, and what it's going to look like. And so I'm just happy to be a part of it.
This is one of my favorite things to talk to alums about in terms of their alma maters. Even last year, talking with a ton of Stanford alums, about their experiences before me, and even telling some of the younger ones my experiences before them. They were similar. Like they played at a rec park, down the street sort of thing. And to hear their stories is really cool because at one point I remember we had a new locker room. My freshman year we shared with a club team, the rugby team on campus. And then sophomore year, we had our own. We thought we were so cool. And they've only gotten more and more ever since then. But it is like a recipe for gratitude when you hear those things.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm proud to have been a part of it and really to have gotten the opportunity to experience what it's like to come from that, just it really kind of locks into at that time. And I think this is what I appreciate a little bit about what coach does is just like, okay, it used to just be like everybody was out here for the fun of softball because you loved it. And, it is absolutely amazing to see how our sport has grown and how much publicity it's getting, and to see us start to just break records across the board just for our sport it's amazing. It's outstanding. And I hope that we just continue to, break those barriers down. But to remember where it all happened, right? And we always talk about, what about the little girl that literally started playing rec ball and how much you loved it and what that was like, how much your parents, enjoyed watching you play in those spaces and being able to play free. It's a reminder for us to just really get back to to keep it small and, to remember how much we really enjoy and why other people enjoy watching us play and watching our sport.
It's very true because I think a lot of times, especially mid game, we're trying to stay in the moment and be where our feet are as much as possible. But every now and then I do see the merits or the value in kind of reflecting back to see how far you've come to, or see how far the sport has come, the program, women's sports all around. And, it's fun to see the tangible evidence of growth like Love Stadium coming this season, and even tangible evidence of success too. One of the things, like this was what my dad always says about you as well, is not only were you part of the three-peat, of course, recently with OU, but also the first championship. You were on staff as a grad assistant, correct? Back in 2000?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's 4 of the 7 for OU. And then the 2 when you were at Florida for over a decade. You really helped build that program up as well as the SEC as a conference started rising too. So it seems like, even if day to day you're trying to focus on small things, keep it small, the results seem pretty big.
Well, it's every now and then it doesn't happen very often where I get to kind of reflect on, kind of where I've been as far as just my coaching career, and really just I've been around some tremendous people that have helped me grow as a coach. And, Tim Walton was that for me when I was at Florida, and being able to spend time with him. Obviously, his route came via Oklahoma too. So there's a lot of connections, I think, I see that happening at, programs, even like Stanford, where you just kind of you start to have these, women who are strong and doing things and evolving, in and around the country, to help not only our sport grow, but just women's sports and in general. So I just really am grateful, for the blessings that I've had of people that have been around me to really just help coach me up even as a coach, and, to give me an opportunity to, and really some amazing athletes that I just have really been fortunate to be able to coach. Obviously, and I get to coach them and be around them and to kind of just steer them in the right direction, but they're the ones with the real talent that are out there and competing and really, challenging themselves to really elevate their games and do all those things. So I'm grateful to the athletes that I've gotten to coach to.
You all make it look easy But as somebody who at least competed in the collegiate level, I know it's not. I know for a fact it's not easy. And I think people they'll see the wins too and they think, oh, like, it's just so easy for them. But I thought it was interesting at the press conferences at the World Series this past year. Patty was talking about how much pressure there was because you all win so much. And after winning the World Series again, after three-peating, I remember her saying, someone asked her, how do you feel now that you've done it? And she said, we feel free now. What are your thoughts on like that level of pressure from the pitching staff perspective?
Yeah, it's kind of at times can feel, loaded, like a loaded question. And, I think, I think it speaks to the level of talent. Again, I'll just go back to the athletes just for a second. I think it speaks to the level of talent that they have, and how much they've learned. And obviously, before they got here, there were people, in the travel ball ranks that were coaching them and that were doing, their pitching coaches and batting coach. So there's a lot of people that I think, really take pride in some of the players, that we've had and the development of them. I mean, I get to take athletes that are, skilled and talented and have, really just a level of that they're willing to challenge themselves, right, to the next level, and then just help propel them, into that space. But it can be, and it was, very pressure filled, and you can't turn during that time of year, you can't turn the TV on or really scroll through your whatever your social media accounts are and not see something like that pop up. So it just, when you're seeing that constantly be talked about and heard, and you're just trying to watch another game because you still enjoy the sport, and they're talking about and Oklahoma, and it's wonderful, it's great, but then it just kind of reminds you of, I don't know, you sometimes you do feel that added pressure. And so it's really trying to, how are we going to prepare for that? Does it matter? You start asking all the questions. Does it matter? Doesn't it? And it's undeniable that there is a level of pressure there, but it's really all about how are we going to manage that now? What does that look like? And it looks like a lot of different things. You try to manage, again, on your personal time, how much you're continuing to consume that, from a social media space. And then when it's time to work, right, when you get your 20 hours a week, or, when you get your practice time during the week, that's when you're really focusing. And I know it kind of is going to sound very cliche, but it really is about like, what's the process to get there? Like, no, we can't just show up and win. At some point, you're going to stand in the batter's box and you got to take a swing at a good pitch.
Yeah.
So, there's a training element that's involved, and a level of trust and confidence. All the things that you would think about are all the things that we have to try to think about, like how we're going to manage our practices, and get our players to really buy into, like, literally the process.
The buy-in. I heard recently Patty Gassos said, if you're not all in, you're in the way, right? And it's so true. So obviously you guys are doing a good job of identifying the athletes who fit the culture, obviously, up front. But you've also been really successful with transfers, especially in the circle. You look at like G. Juarez, Hope Troutline, Alex Duraco, and now Kelly Maxwell this year. So getting them to buy in, like, how do you continue to successfully bring them into the fold?
Gosh, sometimes I have to every year, and then once the break happens again, you just kind of continue to reassess on, like, are we doing this the right way? And I think it's really just kind of about, there's so many different levels of, like, are they buying in or not? What does that look like? What does it look like? Are they, if I'm able to communicate at the end of the day, I just want to be able to communicate with, obviously, particularly the pitchers, be able to build a good relationship with them. When I think about the championship teams that I've been involved with, There are players who are truly, literally for each other within the white lines, right? When the game is on, when practice is going, they figure out how to make it work together during those high levels of competition. And we can be honest, and girls are going to be girls. And sometimes they don't always get along, and that's just, not everybody can be best friends. And I completely understand that. But at the end of the day, when the umpire says play ball, like, how are we going to do this together? Right? You want to be able to trust the person next to you. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that, I think coach has been for, and is really just being able to turn it on at the right time. And when you come to practice, you're competing. Everybody's competing the same way. And you want to be able to respect the level of play and what your teammates are bringing to the field. And so even in the bullpen, there's constant challenges. And, somebody like Kelly Maxwell is coming in, who's been an All-American for 3 years, and, coming into a staff like ours. And Nicole May has had to really, she's done some wonderful things in her career here. And so just really being able to help each other level up and be able to compete and complement each other. I mean, I think that's, I guess if I had to give you a short answer, that's probably it. We want everybody to compete, but there's also a complementary piece that comes up in the bullpen also.
There's so much talent also. Like last year, looking at the run, with Storako, with Nicole May, with Jordy Ball, and then Deal, and that you have so much talent. And then this year, the talent that you just said that you have as well. How do you manage a staff that are all could be effectively P1s in their own right?
Yeah, they're 100%. All of them can be. You could put them on any staff, in the country. I think ultimately, when we're recruiting, if I'm going to be honest, like, I want the next recruit to be able to come in and beat somebody like Nicole May out. I want, somebody to come in and be better, because all that's going to do is just level up the person in front of them, right? If they're coming in to compete for that, there is a level of competition that happens, and it's just having a level of honesty, within our space of saying, okay, how am I going to get better? If we want more, what does that look like? And how are we going to get there? Right? We got to get a plan together. And I want to be on the same page with our pitchers to say, like, yes, I'm in agreement that that's how we should get there. And then we work for it. So, it is challenging to keep everybody happy, but somehow, for the most part, it usually ends up working out pretty good. But there's some tough losses in there, even within our team, within our pitching staff, where, sometimes you're not going to have your stuff that day. And then we just have to go back and assess and go, okay, what happened? Why did that happen? How can we get better? What are we going to learn from this, right? Because it's really about learning and then evolving and trying to get it right the next time.
Right. That's the thing too, is so many people have potential, but it's one thing to have the potential. It's another thing to realize that potential. And I feel like we've seen the development over time. Like that's a big element too, from an outsider's perspective, what your coaching style has been like at OU is, and beyond, is the development piece. Like, what is it that allows people to actually realize their potential, more than oh yeah, I got a great curveball.
I still feel like I'm searching for that, every year. And sometimes it comes, I think a lot of times it comes with failure. I mean, at some point, I don't know, there is a level of failure that happens. There's always doubt. I think I don't even know if that's true. A lot of high level athletes, like, people have doubts about what I doubt some things that I do sometimes, and that's just the truth. And if I didn't, then I would figure out somewhere along the way that I didn't do it right. Right. So, it's really just about building confidence. If you're going to be a pitcher any top 15 to 20 school across the country, you're going to have to figure out how to have some level of confidence. And sometimes your confidence can get knocked down, but how do you get up from that, right? Like, how are you going to bounce back? And so there is a resilience factor, I think, that really matters on how you handle those spaces. And I see a lot of growth happen with that. And fortunately and unfortunately for us in the fall, that happens pretty fast against our offense at times. And it can be hard. I don't know that our ERAs would even make the top 150 list the last couple of years in the fall. But, like I said, it's just constantly learning and reevaluating and reassessing and trying to get better and trying to get right so that we can build confidence in there at some point.
Well, I mean, when you're going up against, the best offense in the country, obviously it's an iron sharpens iron thing though, too, because they're also facing fantastic pitchers. So it's like, no wonder, it's like so much of the battle testing even happens in the fall to a certain degree. And it's like, no wonder, sure, you see the stats at the end of the day, but like you are a very well-rounded team because of that, because you're all having to work together, but also compete against each other and learn from each other.
Yeah, and I think they do a great job of that too. And we try to create space where they can learn from each other and have open conversation about, there's nothing worse than, and, where I've done this on more than a few occasions, like I have the hitters, just kind of talk about like, well, this is what I'm seeing. And this is why I feel like I have confidence when I'm facing pitcher A, pitcher B, pitcher C. And then it's like nobody wants to be told or heard their weaknesses, but sometimes when you understand that, then you can work on it to make it a strength. So I try to take the negative and turn it into a positive in that space. But I really think it's good feedback because obviously, a lot of times, always the pitchers are respecting, what the hitters do and how they're doing it. So it does allow us to really work well with each other and be able to help each other in those spaces.
You're so right too, that it seems like the X factor or the thing that takes people to the next level, it always comes back to the mental game. Always. I mean, it's like there's a reason Yogi Berra said that 90% of the game is mental and the other half physical, and 100%. It's so consistently, obviously there's that physical skill and athleticism, but it's so interesting how it always comes back to something in terms of the mental game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and speaking of development, I've always wanted to ask someone like you who's leading like this fantastic group of pitchers, when you're looking at developing somebody, obviously, sometimes you have to make changes or certain tweaks or things going on, whether that's mental or physical, whatever it is. When you're developing a pitcher, are you more focused on making those small tweaks to whatever their foundation is? Or do you not have a problem sort of changing something completely about what they're doing?
Yeah, I try to be a little ginger in that space. Number one, I'm hopeful that what we recruited them for were their strengths. I think that just kind of organically happens. Like, you're a really good rise ball pitcher. And so that's what our staff needs. And sometimes I just have to I'm just trying to remind myself, don't mess her up. I think that's probably one of my bigger goals is okay, don't mess up what she's really good at. But also, how can we get it a little bit sharper, right? So we want to try to keep the staples together, but also try to tighten up things that are around it and figure out, ways what they come to the table with can be rounded out. Like, how are we going to add value? How are we going to continue to grow and develop and evolve? So I certainly want their best stuff. I always want them to be confident in that, as they should be. And then if it's not, then, we try to figure out why. But I certainly want to really just handle them with white gloves and be able to really develop some confidence in there along the way to where they understand. Like, I want them to know what they're good at. If you are going to compete and if we're going to try to make a run, like, you have to understand what's good. And then you have to be honest in the process about, okay, where do I need to get better, or what do I need to get better? You're not going to have your best stuff all the time. It just doesn't happen like that. So we want to make sure that the level of confidence in there is right. And sometimes we have to work on that too, and that's okay.
It seems like that's a very open communication between you and them. It's not just sort of from the top down, like you being like, oh, you need to do X, Y, and Z. It sounds like there are conversations where maybe even the pitcher herself is saying, I'd really like to get better at like this, or I'd like to improve in that. And that part seems pretty key to me too.
Yeah. I mean, I want them to be able to trust me. I think having that piece in the recruiting process is important too, so that they understand, they get a feel for who I am and what we do and how we do things. And then hopefully they can be comfortable when they actually get into the system, and we can continue to have that conversation. If they don't trust me, then it's all for naught. And so it's really, I think that's a big part, of my job, and really any coach's job, to be able to gain the trust of their athletes, so that you can have a process that works for you. Right. So I think that really is key. That trust factor is really important for me in particular, but I would venture to say that is probably a key thing for all coaches across the country, to be able to, create an environment where their players can trust them, so that when the game's on the line, when things get a little bit scary, we already trust each other that things are going to work in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Well, I've read too that your pitchers have described you as having a coaching style that's very calming, and that you communicate well as well. But when you go out to the mound for a visit, for example, what's the approach that you take to those conversations?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think every pitcher is a little bit different. And this is, I think, what I always try to, let them know, like, and not necessarily in the middle of a game, but they know this beforehand. Like, nobody's trying to let the ball leave the yard.
Right.
Like, I get, like, you didn't throw that pitch on purpose. So let's just talk about, like, okay, I just want to know, like, okay, how are we going to be better right now? Or if it's a good timeout, like, let's talk about what's going really good and let's stay in that space. So I want to be encouraging in that space and let them know that, like, whatever happened, like, we're past it. Like, let's just get better from this point moving forward. I think if I had to put it in general terms, that's more about what it is, okay, how do we make this right now? Or, like, yes, let's keep going. Like, this is it right here. So, and again, it's just trying to go back and, rely on us trusting each other. And the catcher is always in that conversation too, trying to make it right and trying to keep us in position to win.
Yeah. It's funny because sometimes I'll be doing broadcasts, and if I'm in the analyst seat, the play-by-play person, my partner, may ask me, what are they talking about? What do you think they're talking about right now in the circle? And I'm like, sometimes it's well, what are you feeling? What are you seeing? Right. And it's talking about the plan that you had going in and any adjustments. But sometimes I feel like it's just simply taking a breath, and staying centered and calming down and getting back to sort of your foundation. Would you say that there are sometimes, that's the case when you take those visits?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I watch our pitchers enough and kind of understand what their cadence is, so to speak, and kind of the rhythm that they work in. So if I can see them maybe speeding up a little bit too much, we're going to try to slow it down, or vice versa, if necessary. So I think every coach is different. I mean, you can see some coaches certainly going in there with a different different agenda. For the most part, when I'm out taking a mound visit, it's for the pitcher, and to make sure the defense is all in alignment with what we're doing too. But yeah, I mean, every coach is totally different, but there certainly are times where we're just trying to take it down a notch.
Yeah. And that goes back to the culture of the bullpen, like you said. And honestly, I was in the bullpen. I was a pitcher my freshman year at Stanford. And it's such a unique place. It's definitely its own culture within the larger culture of the team, from my experience. In that regard, like even from a personality standpoint, like how do you feel like you would describe the OU bullpen culture?
That's a fun question. I think it varies day to day, right? Everybody, I guess at least for the most part, being a pitching coach, everybody thinks the bullpen is special. Um, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. It is special,
It
right?
is.
It's a
It is.
different place. It's a different place. And it's really just it's one focus, right? Because all we have to do is pitch. So it should be easy. But it's pretty chill. I think our bullpen's pretty chill. It can be really funny at times, depending on who's in there. I think Nicole May kind of keeps everybody pretty chill, and laughing. And there's a lot of one-liners that come out of the bullpen. And so you never know which direction it's going to take. But so I don't know. I think I would just say chill. Like if I had to describe it in one word, it's just like more of a chill space until it's not. And then Coach Gasso has to say, there was a lot of laughing going on in the bullpen today, or you guys are being too loud. And I'm like, well, at least we're not being jerks. So that's a good thing.
True. So true.
So it's always kind of fun to be reprimanded for the pitchers getting out of control, but I'm like, at least they're having fun. So then I just have to check them, but it's fine.
But I think that's so important, especially for young pitchers who have dreams, to maybe be in that bullpen someday, that they know that it doesn't have to be, you're not tense all the time. Even the most elite teams and pitchers, it's, staying relaxed is very important to all of it as well. Like I think, sometimes we can overanalyze it otherwise.
Yeah, there's a lot of sharing of information. I think they do a good job of coaching each other, and I allow for that space to happen too. It's been a long time now since I've actually had to compete throwing a pitch. So, they're their best, they get to be really good friends and really get to, figure out how things are working with them. And sometimes, I allow that conversation where they can really help and teach each other, because I know it works. It works. And that just, they continue to develop a trust with each other. And for me as a staff moving forward, it really just can't be one arm anymore. And I Bleav that to my core at this point in my career. And so, we were going to see a 6-pitcher deep staff this season, and it's necessary. It's necessary. And so I want them to learn from each other and to be able to create that space. Sometimes you got to laugh a little, and sometimes there's a lot of tears that come out of the bullpen too. And, and it happens, but, I want there to be conversation and be able to be honest and open in there.
That's why they say you have to be a certain type of person or have a certain type of streak in you to be a pitcher. Like there's a circle around the pitcher for a reason, because there's so much that goes into it. But I heard something about guacamole parties that you occasionally throw for some of the pitchers. Tell me more.
When I was at Florida, we had those a lot more often. I think the sun allowed for better avocados more often throughout the year.
Fair.
Avocados are expensive. If anybody didn't know, if you like avocados, you get it. But it's more of it was more of a treat. And then I think it stemmed off of, we must have had something, but really, if we can get a 3-pitch out in an inning, there's something like fun about to happen. So or a three pitch inning, that's when something fun happens. So I think that's where it started, and just kind of started taking on a life of its own.
You're right about the avocados. So I'm from California, as you know, but I moved to Connecticut for like a year and a half or so, and seeing the difference in quality of avocado, price of avocado, totally
Yes.
understand the second you said that. It's real.
Yes, it is. It is.
I know what you're
We evolved to chocolate chip cookies at one point, but
Ooh, see, oh man, I would go either way. Both of those are right up my alley. That's great. How do you choose? Yeah. I mean, and we talk about the pressure that goes along with all of this too, and sort of the mentality and managing it. You guys don't do it often, but losing is part of that. Like you've mentioned failure in a general sense when it comes to like the pitchers, for example, but I saw a different energy sort of about OU after losing to Baylor, for example, last year, and then didn't do it again, right? But how important or what role does losing play in success?
I think it plays a big role. It's hard to win. I mean, it really is. I mean, there's a lot that goes into, I think, every program. Nobody shows up to the field and like shows up to the field and like, all right, we're going to lose today. But so you always go in with the intent, having the right intent to win a game, and how you're going to do that, is all in the process. But I think most everybody has lost enough in their lifetime, in their career of softball. But I think it really does play into it. We were really fortunate, and last year not to have, really just to have that loss to Baylor. But I don't know, you learn a lot, right? I mean, you learn a lot by losing anything. Like when I lose my keys, I'm like, okay, let's figure out let's not get here again so we're not late. But you learn a lot about I feel like, there's times where coach is like hoping that we lose, so that we can learn a couple of things. And because it does teach you, something. Again, where did we go wrong? What should we have done better? And sometimes you might win, but I'm sure we've had plenty of wins where it's like, how did we even do that? We shouldn't have won that game, but we did. And so we still try to, if you're a coach and you care, and again, nobody likes to lose. You just have to start picking on little things, and sometimes it really is about the little things. It's execution of a sacrifice bunt, or we had a 0-2 count and we lost an 0-2 count, and so there are all kinds of details that matter in reevaluating how to not lose again, or how to keep yourself from being in that space.
So much more than just a win or a loss too. There are times where I was like, wow, is Oklahoma about to lose, going into the bottom of the seventh or whatever it is. And it's like, nope, Oklahoma doesn't give up. They're still in it every single pitch, and something happens. Kinsey Hansen hits a walk-off, or just something that's very clutch. I mean, even in the World Series, especially the second time around against Stanford, it's like that was such an intense game, but in the moment, in the key moment, I did see like, there's a level of like, okay, we're calm because we know that we can do it. And I think that's, really stands out with the Sooners.
Yeah. If there were thought bubbles that popped up, I don't know if you're old enough for the old VH1 pop-up videos, but I think the Kinsey Hansen moment in particular, I was like, oh gosh, I don't know what we're going to do this time. But there were certainly plenty of times where, I'm sure it felt like we were going to lose. I definitely had the feeling of we were going to lose, or we were losing, or we had lost. And how did we do that? But yeah.
Well, speaking of Kinsey Hansen, we're talking about the bullpen, and it's not complete without the catchers. So I want to just give you a moment to kind of talk about how important they are as well in the development of the pitching and just from a battery standpoint in every single game.
Yeah, I think they're huge. They're huge, right? I think you get somebody like Kinsey Hansen who can really get strikes for you, and develops good relationships with umpires, and I think she's, if you ever want to feel good, she can pump anybody up with the best of them. She's super encouraging behind there, always positive, and has a really I don't know, she just has an uplifting spirit when she's in competition, that allows for the pitchers to feel really comfortable, with her behind the plate. And we have, even this year, we have a transfer of Riley Ludlam, who I think is going to do a really, really great job alongside Kinsey. And so it's important that they're in the game. They're part of the game plan. They know what's going on, and they know how to. So we only have word limited on timeout, so it's important that I can kind of help show them some spaces where, hey, she might need you right now, or in these situations it's probably best if you say this to her, or if you help her out by just say nothing and just give her a pat on the back and tell her you got her. Like, sometimes that's what it is, but the catchers are, they 100% round out a lot of the success that the pitchers have.
Especially now that you're right, it's a committee. It has to be, right? Like we're no longer are the days of the one dominant pitcher for a team. So then I asked you about how you manage that staff, but the catchers have to do that too. So I'm always very impressed with their ability to do that with different personalities, different styles, different skill sets. It's very impressive.
Yeah, they have a whole job to do back there too. And so try to encourage that as much as I can, to make sure that they're ready for a change, and they're ready to help the next one go out and do what she needs to do. So, yeah.
The thing that I think is so great too is I get the impression that it's like a one pitch at a time approach always with OU. But it also seems like within that, there'll be a lot of changes from year to year, but yet, you still three-peat, right? Or you still are able to find a level of success. So when you look at it sort of 1 year at a time, and you're looking at this 2024 season, what are you most excited about?
Oh, I think I don't know. I feel like we have a pretty balanced staff right now, as far as kind of what each pitcher can do. On paper, technically, three lefties, three righties. I'm really excited about that, being able to have some different options from both sides of the pitcher's mound. And so I think that for us is going to be hopefully something we can utilize the right way. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I think there is going to be a place where we can do some things with all of them in the circle. I think they complement each other well, as far as kind of how they throw to different sides of the plate and changing speed. So I don't know. It feels kind of like it's a new staff. Giselle Wars is a part of our graduate manager staff. And so it's nice to have, her back, and kind of have her in my ear, kind of picking my brain on some things too. And she's kind of reminded me, she's been a nice sounding board for me, in the bullpen, reminding me of some things also. But I don't know. I'm excited just about how balanced this staff is. And I think they're really, really eager, this staff. It's a staff, obviously, that's only been together for 1 year, with the transfers that we have coming in. And so it's a different level of competition, a different, you know, when you have a new coach and you come into a new space, you kind of have to learn new things. And they've been all very receptive to everything, and are really jumping in and buying in. So now it's just a matter of putting all of us on the same side of the field together, so that we can compete as a team. But I think the staff is going to come together nicely eventually. It's going to take, I think, a couple weekends for us to kind of fill everything out. But I am excited just about the overall balance of this team, of this pitching staff.
No one has ever four-peated in college softball. The three-peat was only you and UCLA years ago, right? But no one has ever four-peated. Is that something you actually think about as a team, really, on a day-to-day basis, or is that totally pushed to the side?
Yeah, it's, I think, I don't know, we just kind of felt it important to have the conversation. It's can be the elephant in the room. And so it's talked about, but it's not talked about every day. I know it's probably going to be a buzzword, relative to what everybody else in the country may have to say about it. And that's okay. But I think it's just important. It was important to us that we have conversation about it. But so far, really down. I mean, I don't even know. I can't even do math fast enough in my head, but we're in January still, and it's so far down the road that a lot can happen between now and June. The ultimate, you can't do anything if you're not at the World Series, and it takes a whole lot even to get into postseason. So there's all these steps that still need to be taken. And so at the end of the day, it is a new team for us, new players, new positions. And so we really have a lot to work on, even just within the confines of what we do from a day-to-day basis. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's like every day we still have a lot to get better at as a team, in order to really even, continue to have that overall conversation. It's hard. Winning is hard. And it's fun, but it's not easy. And so we still have a lot of work to do in that space to even, really jump and get too crazy in that conversation.
Well, you said it earlier too, like the focusing on the process. It's funny how we actually have a better outcome when we're not so worried about it. We're not worried about that outcome. We're focusing on the process and everything that leads up to it. It does end up usually serving us better to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, this has been wonderful. I'm super excited to watch you all in 2024. I will wrap up, even though I don't want to. But I usually play a game with everyone who comes on the show. It's called Safe or Out. I'll bring something up that's softball related. If you like it or you agree with it, you call it safe. If you don't, then you call it out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So pitchers and catchers calling their own game instead of coaches doing it. Safe or out?
That's a loaded question for me. I'm going to say safe, but there's a lot of work that goes into that. And so they're perfectly capable. Do I have to go? They're perfectly capable. So I'm going to say safe. But next question.
No, I get it. I get where you're going with it. It's like,
yes,
it is definitely possible, but it's not like you have anybody do it and you have to work towards it and build those skills. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So, and unfortunately the NCAA only gives the players 20 and they have to do a lot of other things too. So
also true. Fair. Okay. That was the first one. Second one is all the conference realignments. Safe or out?
Oh, nobody is safe there. That's a hard one. I'm kind of out. I'm going to say out right now.
Yeah. I mean, fair to say, nobody is safe is actually the most accurate way to describe that. But it's interesting because you'll be back in the SEC. Speaking of being at Florida for a long time, you'll be back there next year. So that,
yeah.
And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's going to be, it'll be a challenge. It's going to be different, just like it will be for a lot of people next year. I just want our sport to do well. And I think that's really the conversation that we're having more as a coaching staff. And I'm a little there. There is really good reason to have concern for our sport with all the conference realignments, and for anybody that coaches in this sport. We should be fighting for more, and for better, and for to remain having opportunities that all of these players have to play our sport at the highest level for them, whatever that might be. I just think it's important that we continue to fight for our sport to be relevant, in every sense of the way. And sometimes that means uncomfortable conversations, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. If I'm hearing a lot of things, it's not going to be easy, for some schools who really, not that it should be easy, but it shouldn't be as challenging as it is right now. So it's unfortunate, but just want the best for our sport.
Yeah. And I think, that's nobody disagrees with that, right? It's the how that we're still figuring out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, the last one is bat flips. Safe or out?
Oh, I'm going to say safe.
I'm always
and
curious.
then I'm going to go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you're a pitcher, right? So it's hard to, but also like, I know that OU is so known for just expressing the passion, right? Like in the moment. So
yeah. Sometimes it's earned, right? Home runs are earned runs. It's exciting for our sport. The people like it for the most part, and it just creates good conversation. So if they're talking about our sport, then go for it.
Well, what do you think about like pitchers, with a fist pump or like a stomp or, like there's some celebration there too, sometimes for strikeouts and things.
Yeah. I think we could go in all kinds of directions. Yes, there's a lot of passion, right? You can watch our team and understand, sometimes, and you could watch any team. We just happen to be seen sometimes more than others, and that's okay. Again, it may not always be that way, but there's something to be said about the passion that the players play with across the board. There's been some really, really, phenomenal hitters that are, they could play with anybody and they could challenge anybody and probably win. So I appreciate the skill and the talent. I say yes because I appreciate, it's safe. I appreciate the talent. It kills me as a pitching coach because I don't want my pitchers to be shown up, but It's just sometimes, the odds were not in our favor. So, I think it brings a conversation to the table about our sport at the end of the day. And that I'm all for that.
Makes total sense. Very, very fair. Well, thank you again, Coach. This was great. I'm so excited we got to connect. I'm super excited for, all that's going to happen this season too. And I want to wish you the best of luck, you, the bullpen, and the whole team.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you for having me.
I'm beyond happy we were able to have Jen on the show, because to be able to pick the brain of somebody with that kind of championship mindset and just sustained excellence is invaluable. And we are lucky to have her in our sport. And with that, let's transition to the foul tip of the week. This week's foul tip is about utilizing our fear. Utilizing our fear kind of sounds a little counterintuitive, but if you think about it, we all feel afraid sometimes. And if you say you don't, you're either lying or you don't realize that the root of what you're feeling or what you're going through could be tied to fear. And Franklin Roosevelt said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear." And I will say, the first time I actually heard this quote was in The Princess Diaries with Anne Hathaway. Her dad writes it to her in a letter. And I think what I took away from it then is what I still take away from it now is, what's courageous about doing something if you're not afraid? Anybody can do that. The courage comes in when you do it in spite of that fear. And that's doing it, whatever it is, just getting out there and doing it versus hesitating and not doing it. This reminds me of another movie that this quote has really resonated with me for. It is A Cinderella Story with Hilary Duff. And There's a quote that's in the diner that her dad owned that says, "Don't let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game." Who knew, first of all, that these coming of age rom-coms had so many life lessons? But it's true. I think about this all the time, actually, when I'm watching the coaches and the athletes during softball season, because no matter the criticism that they get, they're the ones out there doing it. And that's going to get my respect. And I even think about it for myself, too, doing a lot of things that are new this year and last year to grow my career. I'm calling new sports, field hockey, volleyball, gymnastics, soccer, all kinds of things. I'm working with new organizations, just more exposure. And I've talked before I'm pretty open about the fact that I have anxiety. And I think the essence of anxiety is tied to fear and just fear of the unknown. But I think it also indicates that you care. So I've learned to kind of recognize those moments as opportunities to be brave and use that fear and anxiety to help fuel my preparation, my work ethic, my motivation to not only do whatever it is at hand and not be too afraid to, not only do it, but maybe even do it a little bit better because of that extra push. And all of a sudden, it feels almost like an advantage. So that's it. Utilize your fear. That's the foul tip of the week. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of the Bleav Network and presented by BetOnline. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and if you liked it, write a review for it. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, again, at Bleav in Softball, BLEAV. You can reach out to me personally on Twitter at Jenna Becerra01 and Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. As always, thank you for tuning in and catch you soon.